All right, welcome to week 3 of the deer hair wing session. This week we're going to tackle some emerger wings. We're going to do 2. These wings are very similar in the way they're done, and I've actually got the back end of the fly for the second one already tied, and we'll bring that up at the end of this first one. This first one that we're going to do is just kind of a standard emerger wing. You think Bob Wyatt deer hair style emerger wing, where it's all the hair is totally encased inside the body, and we'll show you a real neat way to help taper that body down. And then we'll also, here in just a minute, I'm going to switch the camera angle, and we're going to talk about how to get deer hair dubbing. In this case, we're going to blend some rabbit and deer hair together, just simply because I don't have enough underfur. And so we'll do that here in just a second. And then after we tie that fly, I've already got the back end of another fly done, and I'll show you how to put on what's known as more of like a cripple wing, where you've got these little wing buds that come up out of the back. And so both flies are very similar in nature, so we'll cover both of those. And you can tie a ton of flies using these 2 wings. So let's turn the camera angle real quick, and we'll cover the deer hair dubbing and get our wing situated and stacked and cleaned and all that good stuff, and then we'll come back and we'll tie the bug. Okay, so to make our dubbing, we're going to go ahead and prep our wing first, because we're going to use a bunch of the scraps that we're going to take out with the comb to help enhance the dubbing. Now, if you have a winter deer and you've got a ton of underfur, you can actually just use the underfur and then the little bits of hair that we're going to put in. But since we don't have a ton of underfur in this particular piece of deer, we're going to substitute what the underfur would be with some rabbit. And I've just got some natural rabbit here in a bag, and so we'll do that. But first we want to line up our wing and make sure we've got the piece that we want and the amount that we want. Same way. We're not going to change tactics on that in this week or in any of the other ones. So we'll cut out our deer, and we can just start pulling some of this stuff out like we normally would. We just want to leave it into a pile, and then when we run a comb, we'll just grab, pinch by the tips and run out the backside. You'll see all this other stuff comes out too. We'll just add that to the pile. Now again, if this was a deer that was taken more in winter, or towards winter I should say, you're going to get a lot more underfur on this. Now we'll go ahead and put this in the stacker. And you want this wing a little thinner, as you'll see when we actually go to tie the fly. You can make it thicker, but it's a little bit more difficult on the body. So I'm just going to go ahead and start the stacking process and just make sure I've got everything all nice and cleaned out. And hey, look at there. A bug found a home in my hair stacker again. Okay, that's actually looking pretty good. So I'm just going to go put it back in there. Okay, and now I'll set that out of the way. So normally if you'd have a bunch of that underfur, you could literally just pull it out and put it into a pile and start to blend, or you could put it into a coffee grinder if you wanted. I'm just going to take some of this rabbit here. I'm just going to make enough to dub a couple of flies. It's usually easier if you dub a couple, and then you can put the leftovers in a little bag if you want. And a lot of people don't think of using deer or deer hair underfur to incorporate into dubbing, and it actually can make for some really nice buggy flies. So we're just going to take a little bit of this here. You don't need to line it up or stack it or anything. We're just going to come through and start trimming little bits of it out and let it fall right into that pile. And this is just going to add some spikiness to the dubbing. It's going to give that body this, hey, I'm a bug and I'm starting to explode out of my former self look. And so we just want to twist and bend and pinch it all back together and so on until we have just a nice little pile of rabbit hair and deer hair combined. And I'm just going to set that out the way, and now we'll go back to, we'll get working on this fly. Okay, so now that we have our deer hair wing stacked and ready, and we have our dubbing blended, let's go ahead and start this fly. I've just got a size 12 emerger hook in the vise. Different manufacturers are going to have different styles of bends on their emerger hook. This one happens to be a little bit more elongated, almost kind of like a mustad caddis hook. You can also tie these on clean cameras. Clean camera is kind of a fun way to do emergers. And thread I'll be using is Simperfly 80 Classic Waxed in Mocha Brown. And I'm going to start my thread about 2 bodkin widths behind that eye, a solid 2 bodkin widths. I'm going to come partially down into that thorax, down into the abdomen just slightly, and come back forward. And then you can either rip the thread off or trim it out. You can also save your tag and do a thread rib if you want to do that. We're going to go ahead and do something a little bit different and use some Flashaboo. But I'm going to go ahead and take my thread and I'm going to run this back down, get some nice touching turns. All we're doing here is just building up the underbody ever so slightly and getting a base for our deer hair wing. We want to take our thread so that when it lines up, it's in line with the inside of the bend of the hook. So if you're looking at the hook, where my bud can go, you're lining it up with this inside bend right in here, so that it just lays vertically down off of there. And what we'll do is from there we will bring our thread wraps back forward, all the way back up to where we started. And now we have a nice little taper started. Just go ahead and just double stack that there. Okay, so for the wing, we're going to put this wing in facing forward. That's going to be the MO for the rest of this series or session, is forward facing wings, and got a couple of wonky ones in there. Get rid of those. Not sure how they survived. I cleaned it pretty well. Anyhow, so if it's got a curvature to it, you can see how we've got a little bit of a curvature to it. We want to have this concave side facing down towards the shank. And you want your wing to be roughly from the eye to where the back of the inside of the bend where your thread stops. Somewhere along there is where you want that. And we're going to start this. My fingers are kind of sweaty. It's really warmed up today. And I'm just going to put 2 loose. I need to get some more thread out here. There we go. That one that's... There we go. I'm just going to do 2 loose pin traps over that wing. It's hard to do this in slow motion. And I can pinch both sides and then just set that down right on top of my old thread wraps, and it should leave your wing out the front. Now I can take this and pull directly up, and I want to really tightly start wrapping towards the back. We want to create a space behind this wing to the deer hair. Make sure you're pinching tight here, don't let go. We want to create a space that's roughly just a little bit over the width of a bodkin, kind of as a platform. And then once you've got that, we can bring it back forward. You can start to let go of that wing. We're going to lift up all this hair, and we're going to place a few wraps. You want to go diagonally or directionally back into the wing. You can see how my bobbin's rotating this way, almost horizontally, so that it gets that wing to pop up. And now we'll move our thread back on top, but have it resting so that it's in the forward spot or the forward position of your thread base here. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to turn this sideways, you're just going to pull a few deer hairs off and just bring them to the forefront of this fly, like so. And we're going to take our thread and just put a couple of loose wraps, don't tighten down on it, just to capture it and trap it in the forward position. Now I'll show you why as we go through this. A lot of the times what people will do is they'll try to take their deer hair and cut it and angle it from the top down. And what ends up happening often is you get these massive drop-offs on your fly, and I'm sure you've seen them, or maybe you've even faced that, and you're like, man, how do I get that to stop? So this is a way that I use to actually get that to stop. So now, once we have all this deer hair, I can lift all of this up and just drop a few down. And this takes a little bit of practice, but the more you do it, you can get pretty quick at it. And we're just going to cut right there. And then we can take another little batch, and we're going to cut it just past that first one we cut, so that we're adding a slight slope to the fly, and we're putting a little bit of a taper in. But now as we do this, and we're doing it from underneath and not over the top, yes, it does take another minute or two to do it this way. But what it's going to do is it's going to help eliminate any... Oh, last one just wasn't enough. But it's going to help eliminate any steps that you have on your body work. So every time it's just extending it a little bit further and further past until we have all of it gone. So you can see it almost how it builds like a little angle wing by itself. So as we take this off, we undo that, we can take this and fold this down over all of this hair. And this long hair is going to hold all of this in place, so all of your steps are going to be where you normally have these drop-offs in your body. They're all going to be concealed on the inside next to the shank and not on the outside where it's going to show through your dubbing. Now, as we do this, we want to real methodically just go through, place nice, tight thread wraps right next to one another. Try not to leave any gappage or keep it very minimum. And as we roll through, you may need to trim off some individual little hairs here and there that are sticking out and getting in your way. And plus it gives you something nice to hold on to help keep all of this down. There we go. And ever so slowly, we're going to build this in. It's going to start to taper and get thinner and thinner and thinner. This becomes a little bit more difficult on them smaller ones, so I missed a step there. That'll be all right because we've got another fail-safe plan here. So once you get down towards the end, we'll clip out this last little bit. And if you have a little bit sticking out of the back, don't worry about that too much. We got a way to clean that up too. So you should have something that looks about like this. You can see how it gets a little bit more difficult down towards the back, but the slope of the taper of the fly running along the slope of that shank really is like it's starting to come together and looks nice. So we're going to do a shuck on this. A lot of the times you'll see people use Antron, and you can use Antron. I'm going to use some ice dub. And I'm just going to take this ice dub and kind of pull it apart so that it's all running relatively in the same direction. And you really don't want much here. It's not even necessary. You don't have to do this if you don't want. But I'm going to take some of this and just have a little bit flaring out the back. And we're just going to wrap this in coming forward. We don't have to be super precise at this point because we already have our taper. Let's trim that out. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my rib in. And the rib's just going to be a piece of this pearl flashabou here. So I'm going to get this so either it lines up or I put just a couple of wraps over and I'm going to pull until my tag comes right inside where that thread's going to be. And now I'll bring this down on the, rolling it slowly over into the bottom. Okay, we can bring our thread wraps back up just a turn or two. Now we need to move to our wax. We're going to wax our thread. And now we're going to get our dubbing that we made. And these make for some really nice buggy looking flies. And so we don't need a whole lot, so as I do this I want to just kind of put a little and twist, put a little and twist. You can actually also, with this stuff, you can just wax your thread, tap it on, and then spin your thread, and that eventually will wind up for you. That's also a good option. Now that works especially well on the little ones because you're already not having a whole lot of dubbing there, and the bodies are small, so you can, and it gets difficult to dub that small stuff. So I'm going to work my thread back down the bend and into this shuck, just a turn or two, and if you need to, you can start to, now that we've wrapped around it a couple times, you can twist that dubbing again. So I'm just going to start bringing this guy forward. You want to, since we've already pre-tapered our body, you want to try to keep your dubbing noodle fairly even. And we're just going to work this guy coming up. Okay, so we have something like that, and I know it looks all bushy and messy, but this is how you make some really nice buggy flies. I'm going to trap that shuck down with just a couple of turns of this Flashabou right at the very base. This does two things. One is it helps keep this shuck right where I want it, and then two, if I lose the shuck, it's not a big deal. I've still got a little bit of a hot spot right there in the back. And now I'm going to start to, uh-oh, it slid on me. Now I'm going to start to palmer this guy up and forward. And I'm looking for, 4 to 5 turns, something like that, just evenly spaced so that it looks nice, running right through there. I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, that Flashabou looks so good through that deer hair. I'm not sure that the camera does it justice. We're going to capture that right on top. We'll fold it back just to lock it in, and now we can trim this out and move on to our thorax and head area. Now at this point, you don't even actually have to do anything. You could actually leave it like this. You can bring the dubbing all the way up if you want. You can switch out your dubbing, bring in different materials and so on. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add a couple pieces of peacock herl to do the thorax, and then work into the head. So I've just got 2 here. And if you wanted to, you could make a dubbing loop and core twist this. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to tie it straight in. So I trim out the tips. Oh, I've got a visitor here. It's crane fly season. I'm just going to trim out the tips, tighten them back, come back forward, and now I'm going to get my thread up underneath. Again, bringing my angle down and around into that wing. You can see how much that wants to stack up. I definitely recommend you practice that because that technique's going to be used heavily coming up here. I think, was it next week when or maybe 2 weeks, I forgot, when we do the compare-done wing. So I'm just going to take my hackle pliers. I'm going to start to twist my herl. If you get little hairs trapped out here and there, that just adds character to the fly. So don't get all like, oh no, I've got something trapped. The whole idea behind a pattern like this is that it looks really buggy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to sneak this under where my wing is. So I'm pull everything back, and I'm just going to put a wrap or 2 in front. If you don't have the room, just do your 1 wrap and then leave it be. But then what that does is it makes your thorax underneath here complete. Otherwise you would have like this little thread lump sticking out underneath, or very possibly have it sticking out underneath. I can go 1 more. Okay, I'm going to swing that on the other side of my thread. Create that natural catch. Okay, now I'm going to move it to the back, start wrapping back over it just to build the head. When we build this head, we want to build it back into the actual fly itself. Okay, and now that we have that, you can just trim these out. You can see how nice and buggy this fly is already. And then from here, just to finish it, you just got to build that head to desired girth, right? Like if you want it to be a little bit beefier, if you got a few things that you need to trap down, this is where you just make those precise thread wraps to get that to happen. And then once you're satisfied, I got those two little hairs right there. I can't hardly see them anywhere except on camera. See if I can swoop around and bring them in. There we go, that'll work. And now that we have that, let me get my fingers to work here. I'm going to go ahead and wet whip this fly, and then we'll be done. Now you can change the colors around on this, all kinds of stuff. Lots of different materials you can use here. You can use, different kinds of natural dubbings, beaver and muskrat and all kinds of fun stuff. All different colors of rabbit, hare's mask, really whatever you want. You can even get into some synthetics here too to create a fly that looks like this. So we just bring this wing back over, push down, and then it kind of as that head and that glue is setting, I should say, it's going to help set this wing in place. And so we just kind of take our fingers and open it up naturally so it splays out like this. And there you have kind of what you would consider like a Bob Wyatt deer hair emerger type style. And so you can actually use these to fish mayfly and caddis. Might be able to do stoneflies, but they don't emerge the same way. So what we'll do next is I've actually got the back end of a fly already made. I'm going to switch that out in my vise. And we'll go ahead and do the cripple. So I've just got the back end of a fly built here. And I just did something a little bit different. I made a quill body out of using these fibers right on the lower end area of your eye. That's where you get the nicer segmentation. And so to do this, I'm just going to tie this back on. We'll pretend that it was never untied. Same principle, the thread should be in roughly the same spot and everything. Now I've got to go ahead and stack another wing real quick. Okay, so now that I've got my wing stacked again, I kind of pushed it when I pinched it. It'll be okay. Again, I want the concave side facing down if possible. Same principle, 2 loose wraps over. Gotta get more thread out. 2 loose pinch wraps over. You can now seat this guy right where you want it, which I don't want him down in that thorax. I want him up front here. There we go. And so you can see the only difference here is the time that you're putting the wing on. So either you're going to do your deer hair wing first, or you're going to do it second. If you do it second, this is typically where most people put it. I'm sure that there's some people out there that do it a little bit differently. Everybody's got these different little nuances that they like, and that's cool. Just trying to cover the 2 main emerger wings here with deer hair. I'm going to pick that up and put a thread wrap underneath, and then 1 more over top, and that's going to actually, you can see how that opens up and flares this section open. And you want to go ahead and spread this front wing out to right where you want it. However, if you want it flared open more, you pinch and twist. If you want it closed, you're going to kind of grab and then place a couple of thread wraps to keep it closed, a little bit more closed. I've seen them done both ways. So that's up to you. So now once you have this, you can actually build your thorax and leave this part for last. I'm just going to go ahead and trim this out. See if I can turn this sideways. I'm going to run my scissors a couple bodkin widths past where this little thorax area is, and that's where I'm going to sneak it up on the inside, and we're just going to cut it off straight. It's hard to do this on the side, but you can kind of see. And then, oh, almost had all of it. And then what that does is that creates this little impression of a wing that's stuck. That's why they call it a cripple wing. It's just a crippled mayfly in the water. It's a wounded warrior in the water, and he can't get out. It makes it easy prey for a trout, and so they have a hard time resisting these when the hatch is on, because they don't have to put in any serious effort. The bug is completely defenseless in the water. And now you can do whatever you want. You can put dubbing in, peacock herl. I'll go ahead and just put some more peacock herl in because I have it handy. A different style of dubbing, you know, natural, synthetic. Boy, you can really have some fun here. I've even seen people, believe it or not, I've seen a few people dub what am I thinking of? McFly foam, and put a little McFly foam bubble in right there, almost to represent like it's like a midge or something that's hatching. And we're gonna do the same thing. Put a few thread wraps in. We get right up underneath that wing if I can. Okay. I'm gonna do the same thing. Twist it up, roll it around in my fingers, bring it up and over. Do a few more twists. Oh, I popped one. The hook got it. I gotta get rid of that now. And I'll do the same thing by lifting that wing up and placing a few up front and underneath. Here, before I do that, you can kind of see, if you don't bring something up underneath, you're going to get this thread bubble there that you can kind of see. And sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it really looks ugly. So that's why I bring this material from the thorax down underneath and then up front. This wing is probably sitting back just a fuzz of where it should be, by about a bodkin width or so. Okay. And as I work this to the back, and now I can wet whip this one. And then here in just a second, I'll probably just do some still shots and put them on screen for you to see. But it'll give you some different ideas of what you can do with your emerger wings. So now you've got this one here that you've seen that you can do with the quill body if you want. And again, this is more of like the cripple style wing. Okay. More of like a cripple style. And then the other one is more of a kind of like a more traditional, you know, hide all the leavings inside the bug. So there you go. There's a couple of ways for you to do emerger wings. There's a ton you can do with these. It's a lot of fun to play with them. So make sure you just kind of poke around and explore the different options as you go through this and do it. You can come up with some really interesting stuff that makes great imitations with very little material here. So again, for your tail, you can swap out for some Antron yarn if you want to do that. I just used the ice dub. You could actually even use some deer hair for the tail down there if you wanted to. We're going to get into some of that here pretty soon. You know, go back to your deer hair dubbing, whatever you want to do. And, you know, so there you go. Okay, week 3 in the bag. Next week we'll be back, and we're gonna keep with the front wing approach. I apologize, I don't have my schedule in front of me, but I think we're doing the Comparadun wing next week, if I remember correctly. And other than that, you can make sure you're taking advantage of Fly Vault and storing your patterns and looking stuff up. We're slowly building it, and so make sure you come over and create an account. It's free, and you got a way to start searching patterns as we pursue building the largest fly index anyone can find. It's kind of what we're doing. So anyway, you can contribute there. Other than that, everybody, happy tying, take care, and I'll see you next week.